Imagine having enough money to buy skyscrapers, private jets, even hospitals, but not a single smile from your own children. That was a dream. Cole's reality. The billionaire stood in front of the nursery's glass wall, watching old CCTV clips on his tablet. In every video, his 3-year-old twin girls were either crying or staring blankly at the camera. "Why won't they stop?" he whispered. Months ago, a doctor had tried to explain. "Grief has its own clock, Mr. Cole. Since their mother's death, 6 different nannies had come and gone. Fire her. Hire another one," Adrien had told his house manager after the last nanny left in tears. Now, the mansion in Victoria Island was spotless, silent, and hollow. Across the city, in a cramped kitchen in Surrey, a young black woman rinsed plates under a trickling tap. Grease, soap, and noon heat pressed on her shoulders. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hello?" Grace Williams answered, wiping her wet hand on her faded dress. "Is this Miss Grace Williams?" "Yes, sir. This is Grace. You've been shortlisted for the live and maid and nanny position at Cole Residence. Are you still interested?" Grace's heart stumbled. "Yes, sir." She ran into the small sitting room where her mother sat peeling oranges. "Mama," they called. "The job on the island. They want me." Before we go deeper into Grace's story, tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and hit subscribe. Your support turns one moment of courage like Grace taking this call into a whole movement of powerful stories. Her mother's tired face lit up. "Victoria Island," Mama breathed. "That's not small, my daughter." Grace dropped onto the worn sofa, still clutching the phone. "They said it's a widower with twins. Live in. Good pay." Mama's eyes softened with both pride and worry. "Children who lose their mother, their hearts are not easy." "I know," Grace said quietly. "But Chukwudi's school fees are waiting. We can't live on cleaning offices forever." Her younger brother glanced up from his exercise book. "You'll be far," he murmured. Grace crossed the room and tugged gently on his ear. "I'll be on the island, not in another country," she teased. Then, softer, "I'm doing this so you won't have to scrub floors like me." Mama stood and pressed a small, worn Bible into Grace's palm. "Take this. Houses that look rich can be the loneliest. Remember, love melts stone faster than fire," Grace finished, smiling. That night, she packed her entire life into one small bag. 3 dresses, a pair of flat shoes, a scarf, and a framed photo of the 3 of them. Sleep barely touched her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw tall glass walls, marble floors, and 2 little girls who had forgotten how to laugh. At dawn, she stepped into a yellow taxi. Lagos roared awake around her. Danfo horns, street hawkers, heat already rising from the road. As the car crossed the bridge toward Victoria Island, Grace watched the water flash beneath them and whispered, "Lord, carry me where I cannot carry myself." Ahead, beyond security gates and polished stone mansion waited. A grieving father waited, and 2 silent twins waited without knowing that the woman who could change everything was already on her way. The taxi slowed before black iron gates taller than any house on Grace's street. Security cameras blinked like watchful eyes. "This is it, madam," the driver said, half respectful, half curious. Grace clutched her bag. "Thank you, sir." A uniformed guard stepped out of the gatehouse. "Yes? Who are you looking for?" "I'm Grace Williams," she replied, trying to steady her voice. "I was asked to report for the maid and nanny position." He scanned her from head to toe. Plain dress, scuffed shoes, tightly packed bag, then pressed the intercom. After a tense silence, the gate slid open with a slow hum. Inside, the compound stretched like a private world. White walls, wide glass, a pool still as glass. Grace whispered, "God, don't let me be small here." A tall woman in a gray uniform marched down the steps to meet her. Her head tie was sharp enough to cut. "You must be Grace," she said. No smile. "Yes, Ma, I'm Mrs. Okafor, house manager. Listen well, this house runs on schedule. No lateness, no noise, no mistakes. Do your work and don't cross lines. Understood?" "Yes, Ma." They entered a foyer that smelled of lemon polish and money. Grace's footsteps echoed on marble. On one side, large framed photos lined the wall. A handsome man in a navy suit, A beautiful woman with warm eyes, 2 tiny babies in her arms. Grace slowed. "Madam?" she whispered without thinking. Mrs. Okafor's jaw tightened. "She's gone. Don't ask questions that open wounds." The photo stopped suddenly. Bare wall stretched where more memories should have been. They found Adrien Cole standing near the glass doors that opened to the patio, his back to them. He was taller than the pictures, his shoulders heavy, his suit perfect. The kind of man people recognized from magazines. "Sir," Mrs. Okafor said. "The new maid." He turned. Grace felt the weight of his eyes, sharp, tired, measuring. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. "You're Grace Williams?" he asked at last. "Yes, sir." "You've worked with children before?" "Yes, sir. In homes. In a daycare." I'm patient." His gaze didn't soften. "My daughters are not a daycare, Miss Williams. They are grieving. Grief makes children cruel to strangers." "I understand, sir." "No, you don't," his eyes seemed to say. But his voice stayed flat. "You're here for 3 months on probation. If the twins reject you like the others, you leave. Immediately. Are we clear?" "Yes, sir." A sudden wail cut through the air from upstairs, one voice, then another, rising. "They're awake," Adrien said, jaw tightening. "Mrs. Okafor will show you the nursery." As Grace followed the house manager up the sweeping staircase, her heart thudded in her chest. "At least 6 women have stood where you're standing," Mrs. Okafor muttered. "All of them left in tears." Grace tightened her grip on her bag. "I didn't come here to run, Ma." They stopped before a white door with tiny golden stars painted along the frame. Behind it, 2 little hearts were breaking out loud. Mrs. Okafor opened it. "Welcome to your battlefield," she said dryly. Grace drew a breath, stepped inside, and closed the door behind her. The nursery looked like something from a magazine. Soft white walls, pastel clouds on the ceiling, tiny shelves lined with untouched toys. But the sound inside it wasn't soft at all. 2 little girls screamed like the world had ended. One stood gripping the crib rail, curls wild, face red with fury. The other sat huddled in the corner of her crib, clutching a worn pink blanket, crying without breath. Grace set her bag down slowly. "Hello, my angels," she said softly. "I'm Grace." The standing twin grabbed a wooden block and hurled it at the floor. It cracked sharp against the tiles. "Bella," Grace guessed, watching those blazing eyes. She turned to the smaller one. "Then you must be Amara." The little girl only sobbed harder. From the hallway, Mrs. Okafor called, "I'll be downstairs. If you can't manage, say it now." "I'll manage, Ma," Grace answered without turning. She moved to Bella first, keeping her hands visible, her voice calm. "You can throw every toy in this room," she murmured. "I will still be here." Bella's tiny chest heaved. Another block flew. Grace picked it up, dusted it, and placed it back inside the crib, unbothered. Then she knelt beside Amara's crib. "Hold that blanket tight, my baby," she whispered. "You won't lose it. And you won't lose me either." She tried bottles. Tiny mouths clamped shut. She checked diapers, patted backs, paced from crib to crib until sweat dampened her blouse. The cries only climbed higher, bouncing off the pretty walls. Her arms ached. Her head pounded. For a moment, fear whispered, "This house will break you too." Grace closed her eyes and heard Mama's voice instead. Love melts stone faster than fire. She took off her stiff blouse, pulled on the plain black and white uniform folded on the chair. Easier to move in, easier to breathe in. Then she sat cross-legged on the rug between the cribs. Slowly, she began to hum. A low, wordless lullaby, the same one Mama used when Nipa took light and the dark tried to swallow their one-room house. A tune like a long, deep breath. She didn't reach for the girls at first. She just let the song fill the room. Bella's screams slipped to rough sobs. Amara's cries fell into hiccups. Grace opened her arms. "If you want to cry, come and cry here," she whispered. Bella toppled into her lap first, angry and trembling. Amara followed, blanket pressed between them. Grace wrapped both girls against her chest and kept humming, back resting against the crib. Minutes stretched. The digital clock on the wall blinked from 10:47 to 11:23, then 12:05. Little by little, hot tears soaked her uniform, then slowed, then stopped. two small bodies grew heavy with sleep. At the door, unseen, Adrien stood in the shadows, hand on the frame. He'd come ready to hear another woman shouting into the storm. Instead, he heard a song. He watched his daughters, for the first time in months, sleeping in someone's arms instead of screaming alone. His throat burned. He turned away before she could see him on the rug. Grace finally let her head tip back, eyes closing, arms locked firmly around both girls. "I told you, I'm not going anywhere," she whispered into their curls. The mansion, used to midnight wails, listened to the strange new sound of silence. Morning came, but peace didn't last long. Bella refused her pap, turning her head so hard, the spoon smeared across her cheek. Amara agreed to eat only if she clung to Grace's sleeve between bites. Okay, one spoon for you, one for the angels," Grace coaxed, opening her mouth dramatically. Amara gave a tiny giggle, then coughed it back into silence, as if she'd broken a rule. Bym, nap time was a war. Bella snatched Amara's pink blanket. Amara screamed, clutching it back with both fists. The cries slammed into Grace's chest. She stepped between them, gently tugging the blanket free. Kissing the corner, she pressed it to Bella's cheek. "This one smells like a cuddle," she whispered. Then she gave the other end back to Amara. "And this side smells like courage. You can share, and..." Somehow, miraculously, both girls settled. Two tiny chests rose and fell in uneasy sleep. In the hallway, Grace leaned her head against the wall and exhaled. The house hummed with cold air and distant footsteps. It still felt like a museum, beautiful, but not alive. Children are not flowers for showcase, she thought. They need air. They need sun. By afternoon, the heat pressed against the glass like a hand. The girls were restless again, tossing biscuits from their high chairs, whining at everything and nothing. Grace wiped crumbs off her face and made a decision. She carried a large plastic basin out to the tiled patio. A cleaner paused mid-mop, watching her drag it to the center. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Turning this place into a playground," she said simply. She fetched the garden hose, filled the basin with cool water, then brought the twins outside, one on each hip. From the doorway, Mrs. Okafor frowned. "Water? Here? If they start crying, they already cry inside," Grace replied, kneeling beside the basin. "Let's see what happens outside." She sat the girls gently into the shallow water. Tiny toes curled at the shock of cold. Both froze, wide-eyed. Grace dipped her hand, splashed herself lightly, and gasped in fake drama. "Ah, it's raining on my hand." A small droplet hit Bella's arm. She flinched, then slapped the water back. "A tiny splash." Grace laughed. "Yes, now. Again." Amara's fingers tapped the surface, sending ripples toward her sister. Another tap. Another splash. Grace lifted the hose and turned it to the softest spray. A silver arc of water fell over their curls like a private rain. Bella squealed sharp, surprise. Amara gasped. And then it happened. A sound burst out of her, rusty from disuse, but real, a giggle. Then another. Then full, bubbling laughter that shook her whole little body. Bella followed, shrieking with joy, clapping at the falling water, kicking until droplets flew everywhere. Their laughter rose, wild and bright, spilling over the quiet walls. On the veranda, Adrien stepped out mid-phone call and stopped dead. His twins, not crying, not silent, laughing. He watched as Grace tilted the hose, letting the spray dance. She was soaked, smiling so wide it reached her eyes. Small queens," she teased. "This is joy, you hear?" The girls howled with delight, water flying, sunshine catching each droplet like glass. The sound hit Adrien in the chest like a forgotten song. For the first time since Naomi's funeral, his daughter sounded alive. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just stood there, a man in an expensive suit, staring at a plastic basin as if it were a miracle. Grace looked up and caught his gaze. She didn't bow or shrink. She only nodded once, as if to say, "This is what we're fighting for inside." Staff whispered at the windows. Outside, on hot Lagos tiles, two little girls laughed like grief had loosened its grip. The mansion, used to echoing sobs, learned a new sound that day, and nothing would ever be the same. That night, the mansion didn't feel as heavy. It was quiet. Yes, but not the old, suffocating quiet. More like the hush that comes after children finally tire themselves out. Grace had bathed the twins, rubbed a little shea butter into their curls, and tucked them in with clean pajamas that smelled like soap and sunshine. Bella slept with one arm flung over her face. Amara clutched her blue cloth, mouth slightly open, a faint smile still lingering. "Sleep well, the water warriors," Grace whispered, brushing their foreheads. When she stepped into the hallway, she nearly jumped. Adrien was standing there. An O-suit jacket, tie loosened, something softer in his eyes. "I saw them," he said quietly. Grace straightened. "Saw them, sir?" He nodded toward the security camera in the corner. On the patio, laugh and muscle moved in his jaw. He was fighting something inside. "I thought I'd never hear that sound again." Grace's face softened. "It was all them, sir. I only opened the tap." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "You opened more than that." For a second, silence settled between them, gentle, not tense. "They slept fast tonight," Grace said. "Laughter tires them better than crying." He let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Noted. She adjusted her uniform, suddenly aware of the water stains that hadn't fully dried. "Good night, Mr. Cole." "Grace," he said, stopping her. She turned. He searched for words and finally asked, "How did you know to do that?" "The water, the basin. No one has ever thought to try something so simple." Her answer was quiet, but sure. "Nobody plays in that house, sir. Not them, not you. I just let them be children for a while." His gaze dropped, stung by the truth. "And me?" She hesitated, then smiled. "Today, you let yourself be their father, not just their provider." Something in his chest flinched. He nodded once, like the words hurt and healed at the same time. That night, in his study, Adrien didn't open his laptop. Instead, he replayed the CCTV footage over and over. The hose, the splashes, Grace's unrestrained laughter, his daughter's wild joy. The camera had no sound, but in his mind, he heard everything. At nearly midnight, his fingers hovered over his phone. "Thank you for today." He typed, "Delete." "You did well with them." "Delete." Finally, he sent just 2 words, "Thank you." Across the mansion, in her small room, Grace's phone buzzed. She blinked at the screen, surprise warming into a shy smile. "We will keep trying," she replied. In their nursery, Bella rolled closer to Amara. Amara's hand stretched out in sleep, catching her sister's arm. The mansion, once a graveyard of memories, held its breath around new, fragile hope. Grief still lived there, but now, for the first time, so did possibility. By Thursday, the house had almost gotten used to the sound of giggles, which is why the silence felt wrong. At lunch, Bella pushed her bowl away with unusual force, eyes dull instead of defiant. Amara didn't scream when Grace wiped her face, she just sagged against her arm, lashes heavy. Grace frowned and touched Bella's forehead. "Hot, too hot." Her hand moved to Amara. "Hotter." Her heart dropped. She grabbed the thermometer, waited, checked twice. "Madam Tina," Grace called, trying to keep her voice level. Tina appeared at the door, eyes already annoyed. "What is it now?" "They're burning," Grace said. "Look." Tina glanced at the numbers, then shrugged it off. "Give paracetamol. Children get fever." "Mr. Cole is in Abuja. He comes tomorrow." Grace's jaw tightened. Tomorrow might be too late. She packed while she spoke. Diapers, wipes, bottles, thin blankets, their blue cloth and favorite toy. Her movements were fast but sure. "I am taking them to the hospital," she said. "You can't leave without permission." Tina snapped. Grace met her eyes. "You can fire me later, but if anything happens because we waited, can you live with that?" Tina's throat worked, but she stepped aside. The driver blinked when Grace appeared with a baby on each hip. "Hospital," she ordered. Now, the emergency ward was bright and loud, full of beeping machines and rushing footsteps. Bella whimpered, skin burning. Amara's body felt heavy in Grace's arms, too quiet to limp. "High fever," the doctor said, already fitting tiny hands with fur lines. "We'll start fluids. We monitor closely." Grace stood back just enough not to be in the way, but close enough that both girls could see her. "I'm here," she whispered. "We're fighting this together, my queens." Ours blurred into one long stretch of fluorescent light and whispered prayers. Grace refused coffee, refused the offered chair, only sitting when her legs shook, and even then staying near the beds. Back at the mansion, Adrien walked into an empty nursery. No twins. No toys on the floor. "No, Grace." His chest constricted. "Tina," he barked. "Where are my girls?" "Hospital," she said quickly. "High fever. The nanny took them." He didn't hear anything after hospital. Minutes later, he was gone again. Tires screeching against the quiet driveway. He found them in the pediatric ward. Bella attached to an 4, cheeks flushed. Amara curled tiny on a white sheet. Grace, leaning between both beds, eyes red, shoulders straight. "You should have called again," he snapped, voice rough, fear leaking out as anger. Grace flinched, then steadied. "I did, sir. Your phone was off. I couldn't wait. They were burning." His shoulders fell. "No, I'm sorry. You did right." He moved to Bella's side, fingers trembling as he took her small hand. Grace stayed with Amara, brushing damp curls from her forehead. For the first time, they weren't on opposite sides of a cold mansion. They were two tired adults held together by the same terror. Near dawn, the girls' temperatures finally broke, like a storm passing. The doctor smiled. "They're responding well now." Grace pressed both hands to her face, whispering, "Thank you." Adrien let out a breath that sounded like a man being released from chains. "Thank you for not leaving them," he said hoarsely. Grace shook her head. "They're my girls too." In my heart, something shifted in his eyes at that something deep and unguarded. On the drive back, Bella slept on Grace's lap. Amara lay against Adrien's chest, his hands spread wide over her small back as if he could shield her from the world. The mansion doors opened to receive them. This time, they didn't just enter as boss and maid. They walked in like a father, and the woman who had just proven she would stand between his daughters and anything that tried to take them. By the time they stepped back into the mansion, dawn was a pale line behind the glass. The staff pretended to busy themselves in the foyer, but every eye watched Adrien and Grace cross the marble with a sleeping child. No one dared say it, but everyone felt it. They had left as employer and maid. They were coming back as something closer to a family. Grace settled Bella into her crib, smoothing the blanket over her tiny chest. Adrien laid Amara down beside her, his big hands suddenly careful, clumsy, and reverent at the same time. "We'll keep them hydrated," Grace murmured. "Small sips, rest. No visits from strangers." Adrien nodded, eyes still on his daughters. "Just us then." For once, us didn't sound like a word that left Grace on the outside. Days passed in a gentle kind of recovery. The twins were clingier, waking with soft whimpers that only settled when they felt familiar arms. Sometimes they reached for Grace, sometimes, to everyone's surprise, little fingers stretched toward Adrien's shirt, catching the fabric like an anchor. The first time Bella chose him, Adrien froze. "She wants you," Grace whispered, holding out the child. His throat bobbed. "What if I do it wrong?" She smiled softly. "Wrong is not showing up. Everything else we learn." He took Bella, her forehead resting against his collarbone. His hand hovered as if afraid to press down. "Support her back," Grace coached gently. "And breathe. She can feel when you're scared." He let out a shaky exhale. Bella sighed as if she'd been waiting for that exact sound, and tucked herself deeper into him. From the doorway, Madame Tina watched, arms folded tight over her chest. That night, Adrien stood in the nursery while Grace packed away the hospital bag. "I need to say something," he began. She looked up, expectant. "I built this house," he said slowly, "to keep my family safe. After Naomi died, I thought closing the doors would protect the girls from more pain. I didn't realize I was locking out life too." Grace listened quietly, hands still. "You walked in with one small bag," he continued, "and somehow you brought light back, laughter, courage. I didn't know I didn't have." Her eyes shimmered, but she said nothing. "I can't go back to how it was before you came," he admitted. "They can't. I won't let them." he swallowed, forcing himself to finish. So I want to renew your contract. Permanently. Higher salary, private suite, a driver at your disposal, and tuition for your brother, wherever he gets in. University, technical school. My lawyers will handle it. Grace's breath caught. Sir, that's too much. It's not nearly enough, he replied. You didn't just do your job. You stood in the gap when I failed them. That's not something I can repay, but I can at least stop pretending you're replaceable. Silence stretched between them, thick with everything neither knew how to name. Finally, Grace nodded, a smile trembling at her lips. Then I'll stay, she said softly. As long as they need me. Adrien held her gaze, something raw and grateful in his eyes. As long as we all need you, he corrected. From the cribs, two little girls slept on, unaware that with one terrified trip to the hospital and one quiet conversation in the nursery, the foundations of their world had just shifted. Not from mansion to palace, from house to home. The twins recovered quickly, their tiny bodies bouncing back with the stubborn resilience only children seem to possess. By the end of the week, their giggles were back, soft at first, then louder, brighter, filling corners of the mansion that hadn't heard joy in far too long. One evening, Grace carried them onto the patio for fresh air. The sky blushed with orange, the Lagos breeze warm and gentle. Bella leaned against her shoal, Amara gripping her hand tightly. Adrien stepped outside moments later. An suit. No stiff posture, just a man and a father. You're early, Grace teased lightly. I didn't want to miss this, Adrien replied, his eyes softening at the sight of his daughters. Not anymore. The twins toddled toward him, wobbling on small legs, and to Grace's quiet delight, they reached for him first. Bella lifted her arms, demanding to be carried. Amara tugged at his trouser leg, babbling a story only she understood. Adrien froze for a second, then bent down, scooping them both up with the gentle confidence he never would have managed weeks ago. Grace watched him watch them, and something deep inside her settled, a peace she didn't know she needed. You make it look easy now, she said with a smile. Adrien chuckled. Only because I had the best teacher. Grace looked away, embarrassed, but his next words forced her eyes back to him. I meant what I said the other night, he said, shifting the girls onto one hip. This house feels alive again because of you. You didn't just care for my girls, you saved us. Her breath caught. Adrien. He took a step closer. You're not the help, Grace. You're family. If you'll have us. The twins stretched from his arms toward her, tiny hands reaching, pulling her into their circle. And just like that, they were wrapped together, four hearts pressed close under the fading light. It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't a confession. It was something quieter, stronger, truer, a beginning. Later, after the girls had fallen asleep in her arms, Adrien watched Grace tuck them in with care that felt like devotion. He spoke in a low whisper. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. I can't imagine it without you. Grace's heart fluttered, but she didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she brushed the twins' curls and whispered the same prayer she had whispered on her first night in the mansion. Let love lead where strength alone cannot. Outside, the mansion lights glowed warm, not cold anymore. The staff whispered that the house itself seemed to breathe easier. Grace closed her door that night with a smile she couldn't hide. Adrien paused in the hallway, his hand briefly brushing her doorframe, a silent vow hanging between them. Tomorrow would bring more lessons, more laughter or healing, but for the first time, they would face it together. End of chapter 8. CTA for your YouTube narration. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share more powerful stories of hope, courage, and unexpected love. Subscribe now because every story begins with someone who refuses to give up.